heroism, devastation, and disruption. All those and more from Typhoon Ellen.
A fireman gives his life to save a community in danger.
Tragedy strikes again, this time in a squatter village at Telegraph Bay.
Altogether, a total of 6 dead and 245 people injured.
Typhoon Ellen, the number 3 signal is now hoisted and the worst appears to be over. The typhoon brought chaos to most parts of Hong Kong and tragedy to some families. One of the worst hit communities was a squatter village near Kennedy Town where huts were swept away. Nancy Lee is at the scene now with a live report. Nancy?
The residents of the huts at Hoi Pong village affected by the incident have mostly been evacuated here to the Kennedy Town Government Secondary School. There are about 300 of them, and they have all been registered by the Housing Department. They'll spend the night here, and some of them will be moved to the Tuen Mun Transit Center tomorrow. The incident occurred at about 10 this morning when the wind suddenly grew fierce and strong. 4 of the huts first collapsed, and the residents immediately called the police. When the police and firemen arrived, a number of residents were trapped in the huts. During the rescue operation, 7 firemen were injured, and a senior station officer lost his life while trying to save an old woman. The assistant commander of Hong Kong Island, Lee Kok Choi, told us he was most grieved by the loss of his brave colleague. During the afternoon, the acting governor, Sir Philip Haddingcase, arrived to look at the scene. He also gave his regards to relatives of the dead firemen. Sir Philip described the incident as a tragedy.
And I hope that that will be some small comfort to his widow. And of course, on my own behalf and on behalf of the government, I send to him, I send to her on behalf of all of those of us here, our very sincere condolences.
Of the residents affected by the incident, 3 were injured. They are now in hospital in fair condition. As for the injured firemen, 5 of them are in hospital with 1 in a poor condition. So that's all from Nancy Lee at the Kennedy Town Government School. Back to you, Dick.
Thank you, Nancy. And tragedy struck again when 2 sisters died in a landslide which sent rocks and mud crashing onto their squatter hut. Betty has that story.
The tragedy struck the squatter village in Pok Fu Lam shortly after 1. The 2 girls in their early 20s were inside their home when falling debris rolled down the slope behind them and smashed into their hut. The 2 were pulled from the mud but were pronounced dead on arrival at Queen Mary Hospital. The rest of the villagers have been moved to a nearby temporary shelter. Across the harbor in Mei Fu, high waves were battering the multi-story blocks along the waterfront, causing serious flooding. At the height of the storm, the embankment was partially destroyed as water covered it to a depth of 1 meter. Water supplies were cut. Several hundred parked cars were caught up in the floodwaters, and falling trees and rocks added to the destruction of the stalled vehicles. Firemen made unsuccessful attempts to assist in rescue operations, but they soon found themselves becoming victims of Typhoon Ellen. In Hong Kong waters, 25 ships were affected by the typhoon. 3 people are still missing after their boat ran aground off Lantau. 25 ships sent out distress calls in the rough seas. 22 ran aground. 2 vessels collided off the Yamate ferry terminal, while another, after initial difficulties, is now anchored at the Mobile oil terminal. The Pacific Coral and the Golden Fortune, earlier thought to be in danger, are safe tonight, while the crews are remaining on board under the observation of Royal Navy rescue vessels. Land transport is slowly returning to normal. The Kowloon Motor Bus Company is operating more than 20 routes in the peninsula and the New Territories, while China Motor Bus has resumed at least 13 routes on the island. A couple of cross-harbor buses were running late this afternoon. Trains and the MTR are also offering limited service. Meanwhile, Kai Tak Airport is gradually resuming operations. In nearby La Yimmun, a tour bus was blown over and tumbled down this hillside to land on 3 trucks. Most were severely damaged. Luckily, no one was in the vehicles. In the New Territories, the rainfall has taken a heavy toll. Fish ponds in Tin Shui Wai and around Yuen Long were flooded, and farmers fear a lot of their stock has been lost. Vegetable farmers also report substantial losses, with crops either blown down or washed out. The New Territories also had its fair share of uprooted trees and landslips. The new anti-services department has been aided by members of the armed forces and the civil aid service in keeping roads open. Weather watchers at the Royal Observatory are heaving a sigh of relief this evening. Assistant Director Peter Lee provides an update on the storm.
Typhoon Ellen is now moving inland and is weakening. The rain band associated with Ellen has also weakened considerably. Therefore, apart from a few scattered squally showers, we expect the weather to improve tomorrow. Hurricane force winds affected Hong Kong for more than 8 hours, and the reason for this is because Ellen is a fairly intense typhoon, and it has been moving fairly relatively slowly at a speed of about 8 to 10 knots.
Typhoon Ellen has left Hong Kong streets littered with rubble that will take the Urban Services Department days to clean up. In Wan Chai, a giant crane was brought down by the gale force winds, damaging a nearby building but causing no injuries. Over in Sham Shui Po, this huge neon sign came crashing down onto Pak Ho Street. It completely blocked the road, and traffic towards Lai Chi Kok had to be diverted. In Yamate, near the Taiwan Cinema, some bamboo scaffolding came loose from a building and collapsed in a mangled heap across Nathan Road. Across the territory, trees were uplifted and branches were strewn about, damaging cars and blocking roads, but no major injuries were reported. The typhoon delayed the return to Hong Kong today of the governor, Sir Edward Yude. His British Airways flight from London sat on the tarmac at Bombay for nearly 4 hours and is scheduled to arrive at Kai Tak about now.
Overseas news. Soviet Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko faces a chilly reception in Paris.